be collaborating with Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky said they had to take responsibility for more than 650 cases of treason which have been opened against their staff. He said more than 60 people from both departments are now working against Ukraine in Russia-occupied territories. The average asking price for a home here has increased to a record high for the 6th month in a row. Rightmove says properties went on the market for an average of just shy of £370,000 in July. That's an increase of 0.4% in a month. The low numbers of properties for sale is one of the main reasons, with 40% fewer homes on the market than in 2019. MPs have said there is no clear evidence that the government's plan to send migrants to Rwanda will deter channel crossings. A report by the Commons Home Affairs Committee accuses ministers of hunting for radical new policies that might make good headlines instead of providing clear solutions. So far this year, more than 14,000 migrants have made the journey across the channel so far. It's thought as many as 60,000 could complete the crossing by the end of the year. This is GB News, and I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. And we've got a great show lined up for you to kick-start your Monday. And just as a reminder, it's my birthday tomorrow.
Oh, there we go, OK. Conservative MPs will vote to eliminate one Prime Ministerial candidate later today after a fiery TV debate last night. So, who is likely to go? Our political correspondent Tom Harwood will give us the very latest.
Yes, and it's not just our politicians sweating it out. A red weather alert for extreme heat is in place across most of England, with amber warnings in Wales and Scotland. Weatherman John Hammond will let us know what impact this could have on public health later, and whether we do really need to be as worried as he says.
And finally, what are bison doing in Kent? That's right, you heard. As the giant animals are reintroduced to the county, we asked natural scientist Dr. Christian Dunn whether this rewilding project is actually going to be successful.
Yes, that's all coming up and much more as well across the programme. And get in touch with your views, GB Views, at gbnews.uk.
Yeah, so the 5 Prime Ministerial hopefuls will be whittled down to 4 later today as Conservative MPs hold their 3rd round of voting.
Yes, well, candidates Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, Kemi Badenoch, Tom Tugendhat and Penny Mordaunt faced off in a live TV debate last night. But who were the winners and losers in this latest clash?
Well, joining us live now is our political correspondent Tom Harwood. You can't keep this man off the telly. Tom, what is the latest?
Well, gosh, it was
also, where's your jacket?
It's, in case you hadn't noticed, Patrick, it is Scorchio today, but it's not just the weather that is hotting up.
Why would
the
you
leadership
choose?
contest.
Sorry, why would you choose the one day it's going to be hotter than ever to wear dark clothes from top to bottom?
Well, I'm indoors, so it's not like I'm not outside attracting the heat. You know?
See, you've got a cushy presenting job here. I'm heading down to Westminster in a bit, where no doubt I'll be out on the green talking about this stuff later in the day as well, because it's a busy day in Westminster. Not only is there a confidence motion in the House of Commons, almost sort of like Boris Johnson's swan song, no doubt the Conservative government will win this confidence motion, but it is an opportunity for the Prime Minister to set out all that he has achieved as Prime Minister in the last 3 years. But also, of course, this knockout round of the leadership contest, voting from 5 until 7 p.m. and then results at 8 p.m. At 8 p.m. we will know who has been eliminated from these 5 candidates, down to 4. Another round then on Tuesday, that'll take us down to 3. And then on Wednesday, we will have our final 2. And those 2 go out to the membership who vote right through until results are announced on the 5th of September. So quite a long second stage of this process, whereas the first stage has felt really quite truncated. It's been really quite rapid how we've got down from what was a field at one point of 12 or 13 candidates all the way down to 4.
What did you make of the performances yesterday in that ITV debate? Because it was more of a debate than the previous one. The Channel 4 one the other day, I can't remember when it was mainly just Christian and Kuri Murphy sort of asking them questions, but they actually had a chance to debate and ask each other questions, didn't they, yesterday?
It was interesting. I think the lack of a studio audience really helped here. When you had people really getting into the detail of policy rather than just playing to the gallery, you had a different sort of, perhaps a bit more of a serious element of this debate, but also a few more personal attacks, a bit more blue on blue. No doubt the Labour Party was loving last night, as, for example, Rishi Sunak called Liz Truss a socialist, as Rishi Sunak said that Penny Mordaunt's spending plans were to the left of Jeremy Corbyn. It all got a bit ridiculous. And then, of course, Liz Truss saying that the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak's spending plans, or indeed taxation plans, were pushing the country into recession, that no other country around the world is raising taxes at this time of economic challenge. So really interesting there on policy disagreements, but also a bit on personal disagreements, because they each got to ask each other one question. Rishi Sunak asked Liz Truss whether she regretted having been a member of the Liberal Democrats or having voted Remain by more. Now, she had a pretty strong comeback to that when it was talking about the background, and she made note of her comprehensive school in Leeds compared to Rishi's boarding school, Winchester College. It did seem like that might have backfired a little bit for Rishi Sunak there. But I think the fundamental takeaway from the debate wasn't so much about who won or otherwise. It was about, did Liz Truss do enough to secure her third place spot? Because there were some stories about maybe Liz Truss leaking support to Kemi Badenoch. These are the two candidates of the tax-cutting right of the party. Which one will then coalesce those sort of that split vote? Who will be the leading candidate of the right? And I think to some extent Liz Truss probably did enough. She improved enough on her Friday performance last night to not seep votes away, which means she'll probably come third today.
Yeah, and so just tell us, who do you think will be eliminated then?
I think it's likely that Tom Tugendhat goes out today. He dropped support in the last round, so he went down by about 5 votes from round 1 to round 2. Now, he has been seen to do well in these leadership debates. He's a competent performer, and he does well amongst people who don't really like Boris Johnson. But ultimately, no one really thinks that he can get through to that final round. And so when we're looking about who's going to be knocked out, it's very likely he will go, and his supporters will probably go to more Penny Mordaunt and Rishi Sunak than Kemi Badenoch and Liz Truss. So if Tom goes out today, I think what we're going to see is, because the last one to go out was Suella Braverman, we're going to see an increase in the Kemi vote, we're going to see an increase in the Liz vote predominantly, and probably a little bit of an increase in Rishi's vote as well. But then tomorrow, we might well see Rishi getting over that 120 mark. And why is that important? Once you've got over 120 MPs, you're over 1/3 of the party, you've got a guaranteed spot in that final 2.
Good stuff, Tom. Thank you very much. Tom Harwood there, of course, the very latest on the Tory leadership race. He disappeared quick, didn't he? Joining us is Lord Marland, former trade envoy for the Prime Minister. Thank you very, very much for coming on. Great to have you back on the show. So, who's your money on?
I haven't got my money on anything. I'm a loyal Tory and I shall support a selected candidate. But it's rather a sort of shameful expose, isn't it? In a way, dirty laundry being aired, and this sort of reality television, which I'm afraid I'm not very keen on, is happening before our very eyes. I think the one good thing, though, is that we are a multicultural party, far more multicultural than the other parties, which will stand us in very good stead when we come to an election.
And how did you make of... I understand you won't tell us who you think will win or who your money is on, so to speak, but how do you think they performed yesterday and indeed in the first debate? Because this has been their chance to show the public and perhaps other MPs their true colours and showcase themselves a little bit.
Well, I think Tom was right. They warmed up a little bit on the second debate. From the bits that I saw, most of it I hide behind a cushion when it comes on. They did warm up a bit in the second debate. It got a little bit more hostile, which was unfortunate. I'm not sure where that's going to end up. At the moment, it's all slightly irrelevant because they're appealing to an electorate of about 400 MPs rather than the general public. And it's really the last two that will, how they conduct themselves will be relevant.
Yeah, I mean, the personal attacks aren't a particularly good look, are they? And you know, that's a win for Labour, which kind of pains me to say, isn't it, really? Because, you know, they now have a lot of ammunition and the Tories keep giving it to them.
Yes, and this whole thing has been about Labour ammunition, and as I've had the pleasure of being on your show quite a lot, I've said we really don't need this sort of thing. The country has got all manner of problems, not least it's going to have a problem with heat. And then there's a big celebration tomorrow of Mercy's birthday, which the government will no doubt have to organise. But the whole the infrastructure is going to be creaking over the next few days. I've just flown back into the UK. The airports are a complete mess. The planes are late. We've got an economic crisis round the corner, and yet the Conservative Party are airing their dirty washing, which is never a good thing.
Yeah, and of course, I hope the government. I'll be expecting the Prime Minister to send me a happy birthday letter, of course, whoever the Prime Minister is right now, the interim Prime Minister. But I want to ask you. What was that?
I've heard it's going to be a national holiday, so I'm looking forward to that.
Rightly so. I want to pick up on something you just said. You said there's many problems in this country. There's obviously all the politicking going on, but actually people are facing a whole host of problems, not least travel disruption. When I was coming into work this morning, the queue for the passport office was humongous. I think people are just desperate to get their passports. Who do you think has that wider vision for the country? Because it has seemed to me that a lot of the conversation has been focused on fiscal policy and which taxes, what they're going to do with taxation. But I want to hear a broader policy agenda and a vision for the country. Who do you think has that?
Well, it remains to be seen. They've all had, apart from Tom Tugendhat, government ministerial jobs. I mean, what is clear about this country at the moment is the civil service is not working for the government. You mentioned the passport office. We can talk about DVLA. We can talk about the passport controls at airports. We can talk about all manner of the civil service, which is not seemingly working for the government, which is a really terrible thing. If you look at their working from home, most of them are under 50%. So I want to see someone who's going to sort out government, make it a smaller state, to really to reduce the burden on the taxpayer of the state, which has now got pretty much out of control. And it'll be that person who enunciates this in the clearest possible way that will get my vote.
Thank you very, very much. Great to have you back on the show, like I said as well earlier on. And get a bit of insight from you. I think you hit the nail on the head there when it comes to the civil service, not necessarily actually working for the government, which is a bit strange if you ask me. But after the break now, just how hot is this heat wave going to be? Expert weatherman John Hammond will let us know, of course. I mean, it's so hot that Harwood's not put a jacket on. So
You're sweating buckets too right now.
Well, it's quite hot in here, actually. So I'm having a Rudy Giuliani
We'll get you some
mode.
powder. We'll powder your nose. We'll see you after this weather.
So your Monday weather is looking to turn very warm or hot through the morning with some long sunny intervals. Let's take a look at the details. So a fine morning for southwest England with very warm sunny spells, a little breezy along the coasts and temperatures reaching 30 or 31 Celsius in a few spots by midday. Lots of sunshine for London through Monday morning and feeling hot with temperatures widely reaching the low 30 Celsius by the start of the afternoon. Plenty of very warm sunny spells for South Wales with some high cloud at times and temperatures reaching the low 30 Celsius by morning's end. And a fine morning for the Midlands with some long sunny intervals and perhaps a little high cloud at times in the northwest. Turning hot towards midday with temperatures reaching into the low 30s Celsius. For northeast England, very warm sunny intervals through Monday morning with temperatures across the region soon rising into the mid to high 20s Celsius inland, a touch cooler along the coast. Increasingly long sunny intervals will develop across southern Scotland on Monday morning, giving plenty of sunshine as we head into the afternoon. Temperatures picking up into the low to mid 20s Celsius. Perhaps some early low cloud across parts of County Fermanagh and County Tyrone at first, but this will soon burn back to leave a fine, warm and sunny day for all in Northern Ireland. So the afternoon will be fine, dry and sunny across most of the UK, turning hot for England and Wales. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of your Monday.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there. Yes, a very good morning, everybody. It's it's about to go 10:22. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Murky right here on GB News.
Yes, and we're live on your TV, radio and online. Now, the Met Office has issued a red weather warning across large parts of England as the country gets ready for the hottest day on record.
Yes, indeed. Well, temperatures are forecast to hit up to 41 degrees. Astonishing, isn't it? But is the country actually ready for a mass heatwave? I mean, no, we're never ready for any weather ever, are we? So we won't be ready for this. But let's speak to our South East of England reporter, Jeff Moody, who's on Bournemouth Beach. It's all right for some, Jeff. Hope you've got your sun cream on, mate.
I have got my sun cream on. I've also got my shorts on, but you can't see it. Thank goodness for that. It is getting hot here. It's getting to that sort of icky stage where you just want to do that a lot, but not as bad as it could be, and not as bad as we were expecting. The sun is giving us a sense of the burn that's to come a little later on. Well, the Met Office is saying in this country we're used to treating a hot spell as a chance to go out and play in the sun. This is not that sort of weather. But I'm not sure people in Bournemouth have got that memo, because they've been arriving since the crack of dawn to camp out on the beach, literally camp out on the beach. There's a lot of tents on the beach today as people are using canvas to try and find a space to get cool. But they're queuing up down there to go on day trips around the Isle of Wight and also in the bay here. So everyone is carrying on regardless. And that does seem to be the message that I'm getting from people I've been talking to. People are saying, well, look, you know, it's a hot day, it's summer, we're used to all sorts of different weather conditions, and because we're British, we carry on regardless. Well, there's nothing British about the weather that's coming. It's going to be hotter than it is in the Sahara, hotter than it is in the Bahamas, and hotter than Athens too. The government have declared a national emergency. They had a COBRA meeting on Saturday when they issued the advice, stay home if you possibly can. That's not a message that seems to be getting through at the moment, with everybody traipsing down to the beach, but each to their own, and it is only early in the day. Schools are still open. The emphasis is on trying to keep schools as open as they possibly can, but a lot of children are being told they can come to school in their PE kits today, and provisions are being made to keep learning taking place. Concerns obviously today about the NHS, already at breaking point. concerns that they're going to be overwhelmed. The government has employed extra ambulance staff to come on shift over the next couple of days to help the situation. And the Department of Health has issued a guideline to hospitals for people arriving at hospitals not to be waiting in ambulances outside hospitals for anything more than 30 minutes to try and keep people cool. Everyone's keeping as cool as they possibly can down here. No one seems too deterred by it, but then again, it is still only very early in the day.
Yes, indeed, Jeff. Look, thank you very, very much, and hopefully try not to get too sunburned. Make sure you get yourself an ice cream or something like that as well there on Bournemouth Beach.
I'm fascinated by the idea Jeff's wearing a waistcoat and shorts.
Yeah.
I'm finding men's fashion choices today very interesting. Not least, you've come dressed for a funeral on the hottest day of the...
This is blue. You don't wear blue to a funeral, you wear black.
Well, no, but I thought I was expecting to see you in a flower, something like, you know, this, what I'm wearing, a flowery shirt.
Dress?
Well, yeah, it's 2022. Men can wear dresses.
Right, we can do whatever we want these days. We can give birth, we can do anything, you know. But anyway, sticking with this weather theme, John Hammond joins us now. And thank you very much, John. Great to have you back on the show. Can we expect disruption caused by this heat wave, do you think? What's the impact going to be?
Well, don't expect me to wear a dress. Let me get that out there straight away. But, yeah, I mean, we're already at about 30 degrees. It's only 10:30. We're at 30 degrees in some parts of the country. There's only one direction those temperatures are going to go, and that's up and up. I think inevitably there'll be disruption. Of course, already the train operating companies have announced that a limited service. I've got to get into London somehow through today, and there's only one train an hour, and that train is going to be going a lot slower than it normally would. So there's going to be a lot of disruption up and down the UK, particularly to transport, with those rails buckling, of course. Tarmac will be melting, etc., etc. I could go on. We've never experienced temperatures as high as we're likely to get in the next few hours, and again tomorrow. So exactly what the impacts are going to be is a big unknown. Nobody can actually tell you how this country is going to be impacted over the next couple of days and how we'll get through it. Obviously, the warnings are out there. A lot of it is common sense. You know, look after yourself, look after the frail and the elderly. You know, stay in the shade, drink lots of fluid. Just how many people, having gone to the beach, will stay on the beach, given the temperatures we're going to see over the next few hours? Well, Jeff will update us, no doubt. But I think it is a day to stay in the shade. I'm actually going to London with an umbrella. I might look a bit silly, but it's going to keep me cool as I walk through the streets of London, out of the direct sunlight, and with a bottle of water in my hand as well.
And just tell us, what's the signs you should look out for? Because obviously we know that the vulnerable are particularly, by definition, vulnerable from this level of heat. But for ordinary, healthy people who perhaps don't consider themselves to be much at risk and might not pay too much attention to some of the precautions that you're mentioning there, what should they look out for if they're potentially feeling a bit unwell because of the heat?
Yeah, it can come up really quite quickly, particularly if you do excess exercise. It's confusion, it's dizziness, it's nausea, it's headaches, and it's obviously sweatiness. But those are the symptoms of heat stress. The worry is that heat stress can quickly progress into heat exhaustion, and when that happens, you actually stop sweating. So your mechanism for getting rid of heat from the body closes down, and then your body just gets hotter and hotter and hotter. That's heat stroke, and that can be incredibly serious, and you have to rush people to the hospital at very short notice at that point. So let's avoid that. It's the heat stress, it's the dizziness, it's the confusion, it's the nausea, it's the headaches. Those are the telltale symptoms that your body is beginning to overheat. And obviously it's the frail, the elderly, people with heart conditions, people with lung conditions, which are most susceptible to that. So I won't be doing any excess exercise today. I will not be standing in the sun for any length of time. And I just say that the common sense advice, without it being a nanny state, common sense advice will be well heeded, I think, for most of us over the next couple of days. 40 degrees today. Tomorrow, I reckon we could probably add a degree or so. So I think probably tomorrow, some places could get as high as 41, 42 degrees. London obviously can never be discounted as the hotspot, but it could well be that the highest temperature actually is not in London, most likely up across some eastern counties of England, and believe it or not, up across parts of Yorkshire. That could be the hotspot tomorrow, where somebody somewhere could hit 42 degrees. And in between today and tomorrow, an unbelievably hot night. Temperatures in some places won't get below the mid-20s, smashing any previous records. The glimmer of hope is that it won't last all that long, and by Wednesday we get back down to normal, mid-20s. So, I mean, that is one good thing about this hot spell. It ain't going to last all that long.
I don't know if I mentioned, but it's my birthday tomorrow, so
happy
hottest day of the year. No coincidence there, I would say. Anyway,
no,
John
all
Hammond.
planned.
Yes, exactly. John Hammond, thank you for joining us this morning. Are you going to get fed up with me?
I already am.
Okay.
Right. Right, next, bison in Kent. There we go. So bison could soon be roaming free in England's southern counties once again. We'll find out exactly why, but first it's time for your latest headlines.
Good morning, it's 10:30. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. As we've been hearing, a Met Office red extreme heat warning has come into effect for much of England and Wales as temperatures are forecast to hit up to 40 degrees centigrade today. Schools in several counties, including Nottinghamshire and Hampshire, have closed or they'll finish early today. Cancellations have been announced on the rail network and there are some speed restrictions in place for some trains. Network Rail say people should travel only if absolutely necessary. People are being advised to stay inside during the hottest parts of the day. Well, the heatwave spreads across the continent. Authorities in Spain and Portugal say more than 1,000 people have been killed in the recent spate of high temperatures, which has lasted nearly a week. Firefighters in Spain, France and Greece are also battling wildfires, which have been exacerbated by dry conditions. More than 14,000 people have been evacuated in southwestern France in the last week. In UK politics, the five contenders went head-to-head last night over taxes, the cost of living crisis, and they all made several quite personal attacks on each other in the second televised debate. The debate, of course, in the Tory leadership campaign. Rishi Sunak accused Liz Truss and Penny Mordaunt of socialist policies. None of the candidates said they would give Boris Johnson a job in their cabinet if they became Prime Minister. Well, the government's facing a confidence vote in Parliament later amid calls for Boris Johnson to leave Number 10 immediately. If the government is defeated, it would almost certainly trigger a general election. However, that's unlikely. A significant number of Conservative MPs would have to vote against the government or abstain. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.195 to the dollar and it's 1.180 to the euro. The price of gold currently stands at £1,438.09 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Steve.
And hear that spectators first saw the amazing aeronautical ability of the Typhoon, which I experienced for myself last Thursday. With the help of Wing Commander Paul Hansen, I took off from RAF Coningsby straight up like a vertical firecracker. We slipped the surly bonds of earth, as the poet McGee puts it, and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. We flung that eager craft through footless halls of air, and we generally put it through its paces, I can tell you. And after a while, the Wing Commander said to me, do you want to have a go? And I said, are you sure? It seems very expensive to me. We only have, Mike, I think we only have 148 of them, and they cost £75 million a pop. And he said, don't worry, you can't break it. And I thought, oh well, famous last words. And so I pushed the joystick right over to the right, and we did an aileron roll, and then I hauled the joystick right back, and we did a fantastic loop-the-loop. And then I did a more complicated thing called a barrel roll, which I pushed the stick up and right a bit. I think that was the right thing to do. And anyway, we started to pull a few G's, as they say, and quite a few G's. When I came back to consciousness, I could see the sea getting closer and closer. And I started to dream about this incredible forest of wind farms I could see all over the North Sea. And I thought about the way we were, this government, in the last few years, we've been reclaiming Doggerland, the ancient harvesting, the drowned prairies of the North Sea, if you remember, harvesting them once again with gigawatt after gigawatt of clean, green energy, helping to deliver a long-term sustainable solution to our energy needs, ending any dependence on Putin whatsoever. Anyway, this reverie must have gone on for quite a while because my colleague said, I'm taking back control now. And we headed happily home. And I was absolutely stunned by the typhoon because it is actually now more than 25 years since I first flew a fast jet. Because I went out, thanks to the RAF, I went out to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina, and I flew an F-15E Strike Eagle. And I remember sitting in that cockpit and looking at wires running either side of me that were actually attached to pedals at the pilot's feet, and they were pulling the flaps. And I looked at that and I thought, this really isn't so different from a Sopwith Camel. And on Thursday last week at Coningsby, I asked them afterwards, what would, as you ask about what would happen in a fight between a Tyrannosaurus Rex and a killer whale, I said, what would happen in a fight between a Typhoon and an F-15E Strike Eagle? And they said it would be no contest. Almost 30 years ago, when I went up in an F-15E, the Strike Eagle seemed to me to be the last word in strength and power and aggression. But compared to a Typhoon, according to the RAF, it would be so motionless and defenseless that a dogfight, in the brutal words of one Typhoon pilot, would be like clubbing seals. And that's what he said. I mean, he gulped a bit when he said it, but that's what he said. And so the lesson I draw is about the scale and the pace of technological change. It was only 85 years ago that my grandfather was flying Wellington bombers with equipment so primitive that you really have to marvel at the bravery of the men and women who were involved in that war. In fact, he used up quite a few Wellington bombers. He crashed twice. The second time into a church. I'm afraid he was always prone to religious doubts. But I marvel at the bravery of that generation. But let's face it, it was only 120 years ago that this whole enterprise began of heavier-than-air powered flight in machines barely more than a century ago that looked like laundry baskets lashed together with leather and canvas and propelled by lawnmower engines. And if you think that we've gone from a laundry basket to a Typhoon in a century, then I just want you to imagine what the next 20 years and the next 50 years will bring. And I want you to know, with this concluding thought, I want you to know that this government believes in British aviation and British technological genius and its power to bring jobs and growth across our whole country, uniting and levelling up across the whole country, as it does. And that's why we're investing so massively in defence, the biggest uplift since the end of the Cold War, and that's why I'm so obsessed with the Future Combat Aircraft System with Team Tempest and everything that involves. I think it is a fantastic project. There are already 560 UK companies playing their part, more than 1,000 apprentices and new graduates involved. And I am a passionate believer in the potential of our burgeoning partnership, not just with Italy, but with Japan. An incredible thing to be doing now, 80 years after the end of the Second World War. And of course, the Future Combat Aircraft System is not just a plane. It is a whole platform for technological change and industrial spin-offs of all kinds, because the combat aircraft systems of the future will be very different even from the Typhoon. And some of them will be manned, some of them will be crewed, and some of them won't be. And in developing these new technologies and in maintaining the air superiority that we have luxuriated in, let's be frank, for so long, but which is so crucial for our long-term security, I want our country to be in the lead. And then on this scorching day, with the thermometer about to blow and temperatures here apparently higher than the Sahara, there is the next great technological challenge, which is how to, as Kevin was just saying, how to send a plane across the Atlantic without burning thousands of tons of kerosene and adding to the carbon tea cozy that is heating our planet to destruction. We know that we must fix it. We know that time...
The Prime Minister Boris Johnson there speaking in Farnborough at the International Air Show, talking about advances in flight and air travel over the last 100 years, praising the British aviation industry, but also just then we heard talking about the challenges it has in terms of mitigating the impacts of climate change. It is 10:41. You're up to date here on GB News. I'll be back at 11 to give you another roundup of what's happening today.
Well, good morning. It's 10:41 still. Can you believe it? Time hasn't changed in the last 30 seconds since Rosie told you the time. But I'm Mercy Moroki and this is Patrick Christie's, and you are watching and listening to The Point here on GB News.
Yes, now, BTEC qualifications are set to be scrapped for teenagers in England as part of a move towards offering T-levels instead. But colleges have criticised the change, saying the new system will exclude the poorest students, and a petition to reinstate funding for BTECs has now reached the threshold to be debated in the House of Commons.
Yes, well, that debate does take place later today, and Fresh de Raper is an education consultant with 35 years of experience in the UK and at international schools, and joins us now. Good morning. Can you just explain to us the difference between a T-level and a BTEC?
Good morning. Thank you for having me today. I've been in this system for over 35 years. I remember in early 19s when I did my first course, D32 to 33 assessor for GNVQ folders. This is when I start assessing the GNVQ, and soon later they introduced BTEC, and now they try to scrub it to T level. There isn't much different, but there is what they do, they waste a lot of money by changing the name, changing the stub, but the aim has to be the same. There is a huge gap in Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3 in particular for vocational courses. They concentrate on that, scrapping BTEC. That is really impacting on a lot of children in a disadvantaged background, even advantaged. Those people are extremely talented, but they are not academic. Why do they lose that opportunity not to go to the BTEC level from as early as Key Stage 3? I have always argued with the school management. We, in every single intake group, we have a small percentage of the student that they are not equipped for a state education, and they are not academic, they are not interested, but they are extremely talented. When you take them to the individual, talking to them or talk about what is interest, they are coming on so passionate and so brilliantly. So why do we deny that opportunity from those children as early age 11, 12, 13? Those people who are doing quite often all these changes quite often, costing the government, costing the budget a huge amount of the money without considering or talking seriously and discussing with the school teacher, school leadership and the college leadership. What do we do? Most of the time, for example, 1993, when they introduced GNVQ, soon later BTEC and now did they give enough chance to execute the program, to scrutinize the result? Do they give a chance to the school and college leaders? Yes.
Freshta, I just wondered whether you think there's a tad bit of snobbery involved in this conversation, because BTECs are seen as lesser than other qualifications. They are seen as what often young working class people go and do when they can't really do anything else. Do you think some of that is driving this?
But some of them, they might reach with the BTEC to one level. Level 1, we have level 2, level 3. If you look at the UCAS prediction and UCAS converting the grade for the qualification, they can get up to 3A star if they go up. So with a T level. And with the BTEC, they could do level 3, level 4, level 5. They just needed to, all this money, they put it on a T level. They put it toward the BTEC and advance it, I think, in my opinion, is better, and try to fill the gap for the key stage 3, extend it to the other end, not only to university. So we had many children will absolutely have the same access and the same brighter opportunity in the future. Remember when Brexit happened, what happened to this country? When all the labours, European labours gone back, we had a huge gap. Lorry drivers, what happened to the petrol? Weeks and weeks, there was no lorry driver to deliver the petrol. Why? Because we haven't trained. There is a gap in our education. We haven't got enough trained to cater the market demand. And we have those talent. If we can try to find it and try to get it on board from as early as key stage 3 level. So T level, yes, I have seen it, is a lot of program, cater the market, cater technology, but this is age 16 to 19. How about below that?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, Freshta, thank you for joining us this morning. Lots of parents will be concerned about BTECs being scrapped, particularly if they don't have academic children, because not everybody has an academic child, and BTECs do work BTECs do work for some people, and they shouldn't be looked down on. But thank you for joining us this morning.
I have two children,
yes.
one academic and one
we do have to move
talented.
on. We will have you back on, I promise, another day. Thank you for joining us.
Gosh, there we go. Right, OK, some great news for you rewilding lovers, wildlife lovers, OK? So for the first time in the UK, 4 bison will be released into woodlands near Canterbury in Kent, hopefully they get on, which it will mark as well the first time the huge herbivores have been introduced to the wild in the UK for thousands of years. Goodness me.
We're just looking at pictures of them for those listening to us on radio. I forget how huge and dominant of an animal they look. I'd be terrified if I ever happened to come across one. But joining us now to discuss this is Dr. Christian Dunn, who's a senior lecturer in natural sciences at Bangor University. Why is this happening?
Yeah, so bison are a brilliant ecosystem engineer. That means they're an animal that changes its landscape where it is. And so bison do this by being, as you've just been describing, because they're so big, they go up and they scratch against trees and they munch on trees and they make trees fall down. They get rid of scrub. They completely change the landscape that they're in. And this is for the benefit of so many other animals and plants in the area. If you've got a forest, they can open up the forest, get some sunlight down. They can kind of change the entire area. And the biodiversity, when you have bison, increases. So they're a fantastic animal to have in these landscapes that we have in the UK, which, let's not forget, are adapted for bison. You know, they are adapted for bison. Our trees, like willow, they can cope with being knocked down. Hawthorn can cope with being knocked down. It grows again. They're completely adapted and happy to have these massive animals roaming around them.
Any kind of threat to humans?
No. The European bison are actually quite placid. The American bison, they're a little bit more aggressive, but the European, no, they're completely placid. Well, not completely placid. I won't go and poke one with a stick, but they're placid, and so fantastic animals to have. And there's 3 at the moment. There's going to be 4 joining them in another animal joining them in August, I believe. And they're going to be monitored carefully, and they are so far an enclosed space, which is going to expand gradually over time. So it's all being done in a really responsible and sensible way.
Fantastic. And there's been some other successful rewilding projects, haven't there? I think it was the red kite, something like the most successful one in history, pretty much, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the red kite, which was just introduced into a few spots in the UK, and now, I mean, it's I won't say everywhere, but it is expanded hugely. And crucially, then this is the issue when you're talking about reintroductions, they're not taking over the niche of another animal and knocking them out. They're actually just fitting back into where they belong, and so increasing the overall biodiversity. The problems that we have is when things like the grey squirrel are introduced, not reintroduced, introduced, and they then take the habitat, the niche of another animal, the red squirrel, to the detriment of that animal. So reintroductions of previous animals that we previously had here, and plants as well, are fantastic for the country.
What do you think? I'm always fascinated by conversations like this, because when we talk about the environment often these days, it's about net zero and it's about, Extinction Rebellion and all that stuff. Why do we not talk more about this kind of stuff and in relation to the environment? Because I think actually a lot of people in this country do care about things like rewilding and do care about things like habitats, perhaps not so much about net zero.
Yeah, but interestingly, although, biodiversity habitats, that's absolutely essential. But by doing this, you will be storing more carbon in the land. You will be protecting the land or houses and properties nearby from flooding by producing a more natural habitat in the UK. So they are actually all linked. But you're right. I think we should be a lot more positive about the environmental message that is given out there. And by highlighting amazing projects like this, well, then we're all winning. And then obviously people who, are maybe not for a net zero will still see the benefits of this. And it can only be a win-win situation. So let's be positive and let's really kind of give praise to some of these activities which are being done with our rewilding in the UK.
Yeah, no, thank you very, very much. It's great to see a man so passionate about his craft as you are, Dr. Christian Dunn, their senior lecturer in natural sciences at Bangor University, just discussing about the fact there's going to be some bison reintroduced into the UK now. So there we go. Right.
Into Kent, I won't make a joke about... No, let me not. I've already got in trouble.
OK. Right, so let's go to some of your views. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Karen has been on. Surely the leaders need cabinet experience. Dealing with the civil service needs that experience. Also, Kemi simply doesn't have the experience. It's a lot about experience.
Neither did David Cameron, so... you can't have one standard for David Cameron, who'd only had one shadow cabinet experience. He hadn't obviously had cabinet experience because Labour were in power. And then David Cameron became Prime Minister. Nobody said, he's not experienced enough. We can't possibly have him.
Yeah, good thing. Good ideas are one thing, and we've seen this before, but it's getting them implemented. That's from Karen there. Yeah, I suppose, look, as Mercy said, obviously it's the experience argument, isn't it? It depends how much that really matters. Kemi's still been around the kind of political sphere for quite a while, even though she's not really had too many high-profile jobs. So there we go. Some more views, I think.
Yes, let's go to some of these. Yvonne says, I lived in Qatar for 25 years, returning in 2019, and the weather is constantly 50 degrees during July and August, and we all carried on as normal. Why does this country fall apart when it's too hot or too cold? Let's enjoy the heat while it lasts. And I was having a conversation with somebody about this, because most of the globe live in scorching heat. Not most, but a lot of the globe. You have 1 billion people in India, for example. India is hardly, the Arctic. People live in these conditions all the time and have done for a long time. I think we do have a tendency in the West to be slightly overdramatic when we experience things that other people in the world experience on a daily basis, like Yvonne when she lived in Qatar.
Yeah, snow or heat, we don't tend to do particularly well with either of them, do we? Adam has been on. I think GB News should start a trend in ending the sexist work attire that the world has set for decades. Patrick should be able to wear a T-shirt if he wants, any time, but especially when it's hot, as it is right now. Women can wear Tank/vest tops, no problem. Is that selfish?
You wouldn't wear a tank top to work.
Yeah, I think we know what Adam really wants. Anyway, so men should be able to do it as well. Otherwise, it's just sexist. Come on, Patrick Christie's, get the guns out.
The trouble is he doesn't have any. That's why.
No.
That's the main problem.
More like water pistols than guns, I'm afraid. But one day I'll get there. But yes, it is a bit hot, I must say. Although, to be fair, I've been in here since, like, I don't know, 7:30 this morning, 8 o'clock this morning. So I haven't actually really been outside. But I just keep being told by everyone who comes back in, they keep going, woo, 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 which usually is the international symbol for it's a bit hot.
Yeah, so I'll keep your views coming in. GB views at gbnews.uk. We'll go to more of those for throughout the rest of the programme. We're going to be here for about another hour. Do we have time to take you through some other lighter stories? Yes? No? Yes? OK. Let's take you through this one. The Royal Navy has introduced sports bras for its female cadets after 4 female senior officials campaigned for them.
Why don't they just buy them themselves? No? Anyway, previously, women cadets could only wear standard-issue bras, which many recruits said were not fit for purpose during the Navy's training exercises. They had to pay £25 each for the supposedly uncomfortable, unsupportive and unsuitable bras.
Yes, well, these new sports bras, however, will be free and part of the dress code.
There you go. OK, well, good for women everywhere. Right, now, a personal trainer from Indiana has claimed running like a dog on all fours has made him crazy ripped.
Or just crazy, really. Nathaniel Nolan has spent the last 322 days doing an exercise which sparked claims he was running like a dog. For those listening to us on the radio, it's a man running on all fours, and he's very good at it, to be honest.
It's weird seeing a human being run like that.
Yeah.
It really is bizarre.
But it looks like a good workout, you can't deny that. He said people rarely stop him to ask him what he's doing, to be honest.
Yeah, because he should come with a sign that says "Do not approach," shouldn't he? You see him running like a dog. It's like I'm not going to walk up to that guy. What would he do? Turn to fetch, trust me. Yeah.
Keep your thoughts coming in. We're here for
he urinates up trees and stuff as well, or is it just the running? We'll have to wait and see. Yeah, that's the thing. We could have to wait and see. You have to follow me around with poo bags.
See you after this break.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. The Met Office have in force a red warning for extreme heat and an amber warning for much of southern Scotland, England, as well as Wales. Unprecedented temperatures are expected. That's why there's a big fuss about this. We've never recorded temperatures as high in the UK as this plume of extremely hot air moves up. They've had red warnings in France, they've had red warnings in Portugal this week, yellow and orange warnings in Spain. So much of Western Europe under this heat. For many parts of the UK, it's a sunny day, and it's warm in Scotland, warm in Northern Ireland, but the highest temperatures, plus 35 or higher, expected across much of England and Wales, 38 Celsius in 1 or 2 spots. It's going to get even hotter than that on Tuesday, and actually very little relief from the heat. Overnight tonight, it could be the UK's warmest night on record, and it's because of that extraordinary daytime heat and temperatures from Glasgow down to Southampton staying up above 20 Celsius and in some places staying at 25, 26, 27 degrees all night. It's because of those exceptional levels of heat by day and by night that we are most concerned. There will be people who struggle to cool down in this heat. Some people will be okay, that's fine, but a lot of people, I think, will suffer, given that we haven't experienced heat as extreme as this before in the UK. And then the peak expected on Tuesday, 40 to 41 Celsius expected between London and Lincolnshire. 31 there for Glasgow, 34 for North East England, South East Scotland. It could be Scotland's hottest day on record, as well as the UK's hottest day, and Wales and England, everywhere except for Northern Ireland, where high 20s are expected. Some showers come along later on Tuesday from the southwest, and that marks a change back to more typical weather for the UK. So a showery day on Wednesday, bright spells to end the week, and temperatures much closer to average.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there. Hey, very good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and Mercy Murky on your TV, radio and online, with you all the way through until midday with an action-packed show. Loads of chat, of course. Let's get stuck into it today.
Yes, and make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual, on GBViews at gbnews.uk. And before I forget, my daughter finished school last week. She broke up for the summer, and she's watching me today. She never gets a chance to watch me because she's always at school. So hello, Rosalind. Behave for your grandmother, would you? Anyway, we'll be getting to those throughout the show. Those views, get them in. But first, it's time for the latest headlines with Rosie.
A very good morning to you. It's 1 minute past 11. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. Now, the body of a 13-year-old boy has been found after he was last seen in the River Tyne in Northumberland. A Met Office red extreme heat warning has come into effect for much of England and Wales as temperatures are forecast to hit up to 40 degrees Celsius. Police have warned of the dangers of bathing in open water to keep cool. Schools in several counties, including Nottinghamshire and Hampshire, have closed or will finish early today. Cancellations have been announced on the rail network and some speed restrictions are in place. Network Rail says people should only travel if absolutely necessary. Meteorologist John Hammond told us the telltale signs to look out for heat stroke.
It's confusion, it's dizziness, it's nausea, it's headaches, and it's obviously sweatiness. But those are the symptoms of heat stress. The worry is that heat stress can quickly progress into heat exhaustion, and when that happens, you actually stop sweating. So your mechanism for getting rid of heat from the body closes down, and then your body just gets hotter and hotter and hotter. That's heat stroke, and that can be incredibly serious, and you have to rush people to the hospital at very short notice at that point.
The heat waves across the continent. Authorities in Spain and Portugal say more than 1,000 people have been killed in the high temperatures, which have lasted now for nearly a week. Firefighters in Spain, France and Greece are also battling wildfires, which have been exacerbated by the dry conditions. More than 14,000 people have been evacuated from southwestern France in the last week. In Greece, 71 fires broke out in 24 hours over the weekend. Political news in the UK now, and the field of candidates to replace Boris Johnson as Conservative Party leader will be whittled down again today as Tory MPs vote in the third secret ballot of the contest. Voting takes place between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock this evening, with the result expected at 8 p.m. The candidate with the fewest votes will be eliminated. The 5 remaining contenders went head-to-head last night over taxes, the cost of living crisis, and they all made several quite personal attacks at each other in the second televised debate. Rishi Sunak accused Liz Truss and Penny Mordaunt of socialist policies. None of the candidates said they'd give Boris Johnson a job in their cabinet if they became Prime Minister.
Please raise your hands. If he wished to serve, would you have Boris Johnson in your cabinet if you were PM? Very notable that not a single person raised their hand.
Conservative MP Gareth Bacon is supporting Kemi Badenoch and says her lack of cabinet experience is no barrier to success.
Not being in the cabinet, I don't really see that as a handicap at this stage. I think she brings a freshness to the role, which I think my colleagues are starting more and more to find appealing. And you've referenced the Conservative home polls, and you're quite right to do so. Our members, the Conservative Party members, the more they see of Kemi, it's very clear the more they like.
The government's facing a confidence vote in Parliament today amid calls for Boris Johnson to leave number 10 immediately. If the government's defeated, it would almost certainly trigger a general election. However, this is unlikely. A significant number of Conservative MPs would have to vote against the government or abstain. Unusually, it's taking place as a government motion rather than the opposition's. It's after the government refused to accept the original wording of Labour's vote of no confidence. The head of Ukraine's spy agency and the top state prosecutor have been suspended while an investigation takes place after dozens of people in their organisations were found to have been collaborating with Russia. President Volodymyr Zelensky said they had to take responsibility for more than 650 cases of treason which have been opened against their staff. He said more than 60 people from both departments are now working against Ukraine in Russia-occupied territories. An investigation into the Uvalde school shooting that left 18 children and 3 teachers dead say failures and poor leadership contributed to the death toll. A report by the Texas House of Representatives tried to determine why it took more than an hour for police to confront and kill the gunman at Raab Elementary School. The committee says law enforcement officers displayed egregious poor decision-making, which could have contributed to the loss of life. Here in the UK, the average asking price for a home has increased to a record high for the 6th month in a row. Rightmove says properties on the market went for an average of just shy of £370,000 in July. That's an increase of 0.4% in a month. The low numbers of properties for sale is one of the main reasons, with 40% fewer homes on the market than this time in 2019. MPs have said there's no clear evidence that the government plan to send migrants to Rwanda will deter channel crossings. A report by the Commons Home Affairs Committee accuses ministers of hunting for radical new policies that might make good headlines instead of providing clear solutions. So far this year, more than 14,000 migrants have made the journey so far. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning. It's 11:06 and this is To The Point on GB News with me, Matthew Moroki, and Patrick Christie's. We're on your TV, radio and online, and we've got another hour up for you. Here's what's on the menu.
OK, so candidates for the Tory leadership will be whittled down to just 4 today, with MPs set to cast their votes in the 3rd round of this gripping contest. And last night saw the 5 remaining candidates battle it out in a live debate staged by ITV, economy being one of the main topics.
Yes, we'll discuss that very shortly. And criminal barristers are going on strike yet again this week, promising more disruption to our courts. The walkout centres on concerns around cuts to legal aid funding and working conditions, with hundreds of barristers struggling to cope with low pay and long hours.
And apparently, as well, we are all drinking less. Yes, that's right. 1/3 pubs visits are alcohol-free, which means that breweries are now expanding their range to non-drinkers. We'll be discussing that later on in the show.
Yes, that's all coming up and much more as well across the programme. Get in touch with your views, GBviews at gbnews.uk. We'll get to those throughout the programme.
Yeah, but first, Mercy gives her views on the Tories.
Now, I'm not a member of a political party, but back when I was about 16, I joined the Conservatives and remained in the party, actually, for many years. Now, there are many people out there who would ask, why on earth would somebody like me join the Conservatives, the party of the so-called pale, stale male, the nasty party? In fact, I was, and in many ways still am, the walking, talking antithesis of what a Tory member should be. Well, that's according to the left-wing view anyway. My mum worked, and still does, in a care home. We lived in a council house I did and still consider to be home. I was at a rubbish further education college. We're from ordinary working class stock. Not to mention, of course, I was an immigrant, and I don't know if you noticed, but, well, I'm not white, I know, shocking stuff. And everyone knows the Tories hates poor people, immigrants, brown people, right? And God forbid you're all three like me. Well, I'll tell you why I decided to join the Tory party as a teen. I was fed up of being told what I couldn't do by people who considered themselves progressive left-wingers. Society is out to get you. We need to overthrow this patriarchal, white supremacist, misogynist, institutionally racist system. Britain is history's villain. We need a revolution. I was confused about why people on the left seemed to dislike so much this country, why they wanted to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Every immigrant I knew, and I know many, would much rather be in this country than the vast majority of other countries in the world. And one day, as a 16-year-old, I read the book On Being Conservative by conservative philosopher Michael Oakeshott, and I came across this quote. To be conservative is to prefer the familiar to the unknown, to prefer the tried to the untried, to prefer fact to mystery, the convenient to the perfect, to prefer present laughter to utopian bliss. And that was it. There was no turning back for me. I wasn't after a perfect country. I was after a country where people could just get on with their lives. I wasn't interested in untested sociological theories about how society should work. I was interested in what had proven to be of value to those before us. Tradition, delicate social hierarchies. I didn't want a social revolution like those on the left. I wanted stability and commonality. Present laughter, making life work in the here and now, was certainly preferable to me than some utopian idea of an equal socialist utopia where everyone would hold hands around the campfire singing Kumbaya. There was no turning back once I figured out which party represented my views. Or so I thought. Sadly, the Conservatives lost me along the way. I just wasn't inspired anymore. They didn't represent my values, and they certainly weren't conserving anything, in my opinion, not least our sanity. I looked around, and what I saw was a decline in decency, a complete disregard for the core values the party was built to espouse, a lack of backbone, lies, deceit, debauchery. I loved and still love, very much so, this country. Not because it's perfect, but because I believe it's worth defending, it's worth conserving. And in fact, I feel such an affinity to this country, such a profound respect, that I have found the conduct of politicians on all sides recently, quite frankly, offensive to me. I've been offended by their complete contempt for the British people, and it takes a lot to offend me, trust me on that one. So here's what I think. I think Boris's exit may just be the best thing to have happened to the Tories in a long time. You don't have to agree, but I think what the party needs is a huge shake-up. They need an internal crisis, an existential crisis, to remind them what they're supposed to stand for. They need someone with a big vision for what Britain should look like for this generation, but more importantly, the next and the next. Not someone who just muddles through quarter to quarter, narrowly focused on fiscal policy. The party could get it catastrophically wrong and put in a continuity status quo leader, and in which case they deserve to lose the next general election to Labour if things continue as business as usual. What I think they need is a leader for change, a new face, somebody who isn't afraid to back Britain, to tell us the truths we may not want to hear, and to unashamedly restore order and respect in this country, and to bring us back to the values we seem to have strayed so far away from. Now, Tory MPs voting this week have the future of the Conservative Party in their hands. It's a huge burden to bear, and it's one they should take very seriously. If they get it right, they might just find that those who have been made politically homeless in the population may be inspired by the party once again.
So you're actually backing them?
Couldn't possibly say.
Why not?
Well, I think I'm not backing anybody because I can't vote for anybody. But I think, here's what I think. Tom Tugendhat and Kemi Badenoch have been the standout candidates for me. I think Liz Truss is continuity. She doesn't inspire me at all. Rishi Sunak, you know, I get he's probably the most qualified for the job on paper. He doesn't particularly inspire me as well. And I think he's too narrowly focused on fiscal policy. I don't really know what his larger conservative vision is, more C conservative vision. Penny Mordaunt, I'm not convinced would necessarily be the most apt for for leader. So for me, Tom Tugendhat and Kemi Badenoch have presented a vision for the country, which I think is the kind of country I want to live in and the kind of conservative government we should have as a country.
OK, well, there you go. Get your views coming in as well. GBViews at GBnews.uk. That's GBViews at GBnews.uk. We've had some coming in thick and fast already, so we'll go to those shortly. But obviously, candidates for that Tory leadership will be whittled down to just 4 today, with MPs set to cast their votes in the third round of the contest. Last night saw the 5 remaining candidates battle it out in a live TV debate staged, of course, by ITV. Economy was one of the big debate topics.
Yes, well, however, all the candidates seem to agree on having no room for Boris Johnson in their cabinet, should any of them become the next leader. Let's take a listen to this.
Who here would be happy to have Boris Johnson in their cabinet? Please raise your hands. If he wished to serve, would you have Boris Johnson in your cabinet if you were PM?
Serving in government is not easy. It requires taking difficult decisions. Tom has never done that. It's very easy for him to criticise what we've been doing. But we have been out there on the front line.
I've been on the front line in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Not in government.
And I've been on the front line of the argument against Putin and against China. I've changed government policy on this.
But you haven't taken any decisions. It's easy to talk. Talking is easy.
This something-for-nothing economics isn't conservative, it's socialism.
Under your plans, we are predicted to have a recession, because you have raised tax, it is cutting back on growth, it is preventing companies from investing, and it's taking money out of people's pockets.
And at the moment, we're getting definite promises of jam tomorrow, when a lot of people are looking for bread today.
And Liz, in your past, you've been both a Liberal Democrat and a Remainer. I was just wondering which one you regretted most.
My parents were left-wing activists, and I've been on a political journey ever since. I'm the only person on this stage that has won and fought a Labour seat. My constituents do not elect people who are out of touch.
Well, there we go. Yes, it all got a little bit heated, didn't it? But joining us now to kind of whiz us through all of that and what we can expect next is political consultant and strategist. It's Peter Barnes. Peter, thank you very much for yet again joining us in the office, my good man. So what did you make of last night's debate?
It was a mixture of pulling teeth and watching paint dry, for being brutally honest.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of TV debates. I think they're quite insulting to viewers, and the idea you could narrow down the cost of living crisis to a 2-minute answer, I'm sorry, it's not a real debate. But one thing we did really see is them starting to snipe at each other. And I think, personally, that's got to stop. Like, this kind of what's being called blue-on-blue violence is going down like a lead brick. I've literally just come from Westminster speaking to some Tory MPs, and we're about to vote today, and they all commented that it looked terrible. You're gifting this to the Labour Party.
Yeah.
It just looked awful.
Yeah, I've heard similar from Tory MPs I've spoken to as well. And who do you think, in that respect, delivered the most digs, so to speak? Was it Rishi to Liz? Was it Kemi to Penny?
Yeah, I think they're all as bad as each other, but I thought Rishi had a couple of good lines. I thought which one do you regret more, being a Remainer or a Lib Dem? I thought that was quite a nice little nifty one, because it's quite interesting. Liz Truss has been kind of billed as the right-wing candidate, and yet her background really doesn't seem to trend in that direction. She had a good response, but I imagine it's been thought of long before. But yeah, just in general, it just didn't look good. I thought everybody came off quite poorly in that response.
So, was supposed to be another debate this evening, wasn't there?
Yes, there's supposed to be one at Sky, but Rishi and Liz are both pulled out, and as far as I'm made aware, that it's actually been cancelled as well. So, we aren't going to have...
Do you have any indications as to what happened there?
Well, it's going to be a mixture of... they'll argue, we've done enough to put it out to the MPs, and then they'll say, we may do another one to the membership in a few weeks or something like that. But realistically, Rishi and Liz both will probably perceive it that they've got more to lose than to win by doing these debates, which I think is playing politics. And I think it's quite insulting to the voters, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, which one do you think so far has stood out for you? Because I know a lot of people initially weren't too impressed with Rishi, but he seems to be surging up a bit now.
Oh, yes, so basically the two debates have been the Rishi Sunak show with special guests, because it's all lended very handily on the economy, which is, whether you agree with his views or not, is his kind of wheelhouse. I think Penny is the strongest candidate there in terms of winning the general election. She might not be everybody's cup of tea on every bit of policy, but for me, she's the one that I think can actually unite the country better. Liz Truss, I thought her first debate wasn't that great. but she put a little bit more personality.
It's Tale, isn't she?
A friend of mine calls her Maybot 2.0, and I think I'm not going to lie, I'm not really looking forward to watching Liz Truss versus Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's Questions.
Yeah.
No, it's done.
What do you... I mean, for me, the thing that's getting me with Penny is I feel she's been quite disingenuous about the extent to which she played... Some of the things she might have said around gender self-ID, and I don't want her to play Russian roulette with, my child's future when it comes to letting men in women's sports and all those sorts of things. But regardless, you can make polls say anything you want, really, can't you? Which polls should we be believing right now in terms of who really is ahead?
The ones I would look at are the ones really from the proper established companies. There's a lot of kind of online Twitter polls, and there's a lot of kind of ones done by Conservative Home and places like that. But there's no kind of proper kind of rigor to them, so that basically anybody can just answer and get involved in them. So I would look at the ones that probably from the proper kind of companies, probably YouGov, Opinium, Ipsos Mori is a great one. It's one I basically live off. So they're the ones I would personally look at.
And what are they saying at the moment?
So realistically, I still think a lot of them are still saying that Rishi is obviously the most popular among the parliamentary party, but they're saying that Tom is surging ahead amongst viewers. But my problem with Tom is he's kind of the darling of the people that would never vote Conservative. So basically, he's kind of like a Rory Stewart kind of figure. Everybody likes the sound of him, but they would never vote for him.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I think he's probably going to be the one who gets the drop today. But yeah.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Peter, thank you very, very much. Thanks. Peter Barnes, of course, joining us in the studio, whizzing you through last night's debate and what we can expect coming up as well. But after the break, criminal barristers continue to walk out over their pay and working conditions. We will be speaking to a QC about this. But first, then we're going to go to the weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. The Met Office have in force a red warning for extreme heat and an amber warning for much of southern Scotland, England, as well as Wales. Unprecedented temperatures are expected. That's why there's a big fuss about this. We've never recorded temperatures as high in the UK as this plume of extremely hot air moves up. They've had red warnings in France, they've had red warnings in Portugal this week, yellow and orange warnings in Spain. So much of Western Europe under this heat. For many parts of the UK, it's a sunny day and it's warm in Scotland, warm in Northern Ireland, but the highest temperatures plus 35 or higher expected across much of England and Wales, 38 Celsius in one or two spots. It's going to get even hotter than that on Tuesday, and actually very little relief from the heat. Overnight tonight, it could be the UK's warmest night on record, and it's because of that extraordinary daytime heat and temperatures from Glasgow down to Southampton staying up above 20 Celsius and in some places staying at 25, 26, 27 degrees all night. It's because of those exceptional levels of heat by day and by night that we are most concerned. There will be people who struggle to cool down in this heat. Some people will be okay, that's fine, but a lot of people, I think, will suffer, given that we haven't experienced heat as extreme as this before in the UK. And then the peak expected on Tuesday, 40 to 41 Celsius expected between London and Lincolnshire. 31 there for Glasgow, 34 for North East England, South East Scotland. It could be Scotland's hottest day on record, as well as the UK's hottest day, and Wales and England, everywhere except for Northern Ireland, where high 20s are expected. Some showers come along later on Tuesday from the southwest, and that marks a change back to more typical weather for the UK. So a showery day on Wednesday, bright spells to end the week, and temperatures much closer to average.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:25 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Moroki, and Patrick Christie's on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, we certainly are. Now, criminal barristers are going on strike yet again this week, promising more disruption to the courts. The walkout centres on concerns around cuts to legal aid funding and working conditions, with hundreds of barristers struggling to cope with low pay and long hours.
Yes, while our London reporter Alice Porter followed one criminal barrister for a day to see what his life is like and why he felt the need to strike.
Last year I earned just over £20,000. It's just not possible to live off that wage in London.
With their wigs and gowns, criminal barristers are often thought of as high earners from privileged backgrounds. But Zaid Ahmed knows the reality is very different.
I was raised in a single-parent family. Because of the issues at home, I had to work since the age of 16.
So criminal barristers are usually paid by legal aid. Can you just explain what that is and why it's so important?
People don't have the vast sums of money saved up to be able to afford to pay for a lawyer out of the blue. And that's why legal aid is so important. It just means that you get adequate representation straight away when you are charged with an offence.
Today, Zaid is representing a client who has been charged with assault. It requires a lot of preparation for little money.
I've already spent 2 hours and it's likely going to take another 2 hours. So I'm going to be paid £50 for today's hearing.
Well, it's 11 o'clock now. The hearing was meant to start an hour ago and it still hasn't begun. And these types of delays are incredibly common because there is such a backlog of cases. If we look at magistrates' courts alone, there are more than 358,000 outstanding cases. Now, ministers say that the strike action by the barristers will make that backlog worse, but the barristers say that they're partly caused by so many of them leaving the profession. As Zaid only earns £20,000 as a criminal barrister, he works a second job as a duty solicitor. So if someone is arrested, he's called into the police station, which happened during the night before we met.
The time is 2:36. I've received a call to represent somebody who's been arrested at a London police station, so I'm just going to make my way as I am on call today.
With long hours and poor pay, many people might wonder why someone would choose to spend their life defending a potential criminal.
Well, I had a case recently where the testimony of the complainant was completely false, and this was on a sexual assault case where the client was awaiting trial for 4 years. It may appear that someone may be guilty and the evidence may be strong, but that doesn't mean they are.
Back at his office, Zaid prepares for a conference which he will not be paid for, nor are any of his travel expenses.
I had to travel to Worcester Crown Court for a sentencing hearing, and the fee to get there by train was £65. The total fee that I got for that hearing was £126. So half of that had already gone before I even managed to get to court.
The government say that over the 3 days of strike action last week, around 17% of hearings were disrupted, which has only served to delay justice for victims. And criminal barristers will receive a 15% fee uplift from September. But Zaid says it won't help.
None of those cases that we are currently dealing with, that are currently set for trial within the next 3 years, are going to be impacted. So that means that the increase is only going to affect us in 3-4 years' time.
With another round of strikes taking place this week, our courts will continue to be disrupted. But for barristers like Zaid, they're not giving up until their justice is served. Alice Porter, GB News.
Well, let's now speak to barrister and QC, Simon Spence from Red Lion Chambers. Good morning, Simon. Just firstly, because there'll be lots of people who say, you know, but lawyers get paid loads of money. How dare they strike? Is that true?
Well, that's the misconception. And of course, privately paid lawyers do earn a lot of money. But criminal cases are almost exclusively funded by the public, by the taxpayer. And all we're asking for is a reasonable rate of pay to reflect the work we do. Now, what one has to bear in mind is that the current negotiations with the Ministry of Justice are against a background of fees being stagnant for 20 years. And that means in real terms, our fee income has dropped, once you take 20 years worth of inflation into account, by over 20%. And so to talk about a fee rise is actually a complete misrepresentation of what the government is offering. But of course, they're not offering it now. They're offering it, as Zaid was saying in his interview, 3 or 4 years down the line, and we can't wait that long.
I read a book recently by The Secret Barrister. I can't remember what it's called. I think it was his second book. And I was shocked at just how... It was a great chronicle of the life of a lawyer and how little they get paid and how stressful it is. And I felt so sorry for people who are criminal barristers. But if it is paid, you know, by us, the taxpayers, is there really any way around it? Because sadly, there isn't money to go around for everybody who wants it.
Well, there's not, and we can't just, you know, pluck money out of thin air. But it seems to us as a profession, and certainly me as an individual, that society needs to invest properly in the essentials that we all require. Nobody complains about money being invested in the National Health Service. Nobody complains about money being invested to provide good state education. And nobody complains about money being invested to defend our shores. They are all things that society are entitled to expect. But society is also entitled to expect proper investment in a justice system which protects not only the innocent, but also properly prosecutes the guilty. And if the system is such that that isn't happening effectively, it's just as serious as hospitals not being able to treat the sick and the elderly.
Yes, indeed. No, absolutely. And yeah, it is a bit of a misconception, isn't it, that you know, all lawyers, all barristers are paid huge amounts of money. Obviously, the criminal element of it is arguably the least well-paid side of it, isn't it, really? But what's it like in reality in terms of how, you know, do you have to do it for a few years and then you do earn the big bucks? Or you can't always be on a pittance, surely?
No, and obviously, as with any profession, as you become more senior, more experienced and do more complicated cases, of course you're going to earn more money. And that's as it should be. You've got to have some sort of incentive for people to come into the profession in the first place. And so people like me earn a reasonable living. I don't earn a fortune. Most of my work is either legal aid or publicly funded by the Crown Prosecution Service, because as in common with many of my colleagues, I prosecute and I defend. But the real problem, and what we're fighting for, is for the junior bar, because we're at risk of losing it completely. And if people aren't coming into the profession, that means people aren't going to be in another 30 years' time doing the sort of cases that I do, nor are we going to have the population from which we can draw future judges and so forth. And it's the long-term survival of the system itself that's at stake, not just our individual pay packets.
Absolutely.
I think a good way to look at it is for people to think if they were wrongly accused of a crime, because that's one of the worst things that can happen to you in the criminal justice system, being wrongly accused of doing something you didn't do. You would want, you know, a criminal barrister, best criminal barrister, a well-funded criminal barrister if you couldn't afford one, to defend you. And that's, I think, is a good way to look at it there. But
well,
Simon...
Absolutely.
Yeah, Simon
the analogy I always draw is,
you
know, if you require brain surgery, you want a highly specialist brain surgeon. You don't want the junior doctor who's only just come out of medical school.
Yeah.
And that's the analogy that I think people need to reflect on.
Yes.
All right, Simon, thank you very much. Of course, Barrister QC as well. Simon Spence there from Red Lion Chambers, just talking about these barristers' strike. But look, after the break, after the news as well, I think, the Home Secretary will reveal policies today to crack down on drug users, which could see their passports and driving licences taken away. But before that, yes, it is indeed this morning's news.
It's 11:35. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The body of a 13-year-old boy has been found after he was last seen in the River Tyne near Ovingham in Northumberland. A Met Office red extreme heat warning has come into effect for much of England and Wales as temperatures are forecast to hit up to 40 Celsius. Police have warned of the dangers of bathing in open water to try to keep cool. Schools in several counties, including Nottinghamshire and Hampshire, have closed for the day or they'll finish early. Cancellations have been announced on the rail network and some speed restrictions are in place. Network Rail says people should travel only if absolutely necessary. Meteorologist John Hammond told us the telltale signs to look out for heat stroke. Authorities in Spain and Portugal say more than 1,000 people have been killed in the heat wave, which has lasted nearly a week. Firefighters in Spain, France and Greece are also battling wildfires, which have been exacerbated by dry conditions. More than 14,000 people have been evacuated in southwestern France in the last week. In the UK, the field of candidates in the race to replace Boris Johnson as Conservative Party leader will be whittled down again today as Tory MPs vote in the third secret ballot of the contest. The candidate with the fewest votes will be eliminated. We'll find out more at 8 p.m. A third televised debate between the candidates has been cancelled because Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss declined to take part. Sky News had been due to host it. They say Conservative MPs are said to be concerned about the damage the debates are doing to the image of the party. The government's facing a confidence vote in Parliament later, amid calls for Boris Johnson to leave Number 10 immediately. If the government is defeated, it would almost certainly trigger a general election. However, it's unlikely. A significant number of Conservative MPs would have to vote against the government or abstain. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.197 and €1.179. The price of gold currently stands at £1,437.65 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for physical investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well.
I feel like I could take on the world.
Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there. Yes, good morning, everybody. It's 11:39. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's. I'm Mercy Murky on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, and now middle-class drug users face being banned from nightclubs and having passports and driving licences confiscated. That's what Home Secretary Preeti Patel will reveal today.
So the Home Secretary is planning a three strikes policy to escalate action against recreational drug users. The policy could see repeat offenders ordered to wear electronic drug monitoring tags or undergo random drug tests as well. Even first-time offenders caught with a Class B drug, such as cannabis, for example, will face tougher action and be told to attend a drug awareness course.
Yes, well, to discuss this further, we have Police and Crime Commissioner for Kent, Matthew Scott. Thanks for joining us this morning. Help me understand why this is targeted towards middle-class drug users. Isn't the point of a law in a civil democracy like ours is that it applies equally to everybody?
I think you might be on mute, Matthew. Sorry. I think you might have muted yourself. We'll fill in for a second there while Matthew...
Get him back up.
Gets unmuted. But it is an interesting one, though, isn't it? Because, you know, I think a lot of people are trying to clearly now remove the market. So because more and more people are doing drugs, and unfortunately it's become more and more common for people to do drugs as well, that means that more and more middle-class people are doing it, etc., etc., etc. And then that means that, obviously, the suppliers have a ready market of people. So if they're going to try and scare the middle classes out of doing drugs, I suppose, then, you know, maybe that's one way around it.
Yeah, I don't buy it, really. I think middle-class people, if they want to acquire drugs, just like anybody who takes drugs, if you want to acquire drugs, you're going to acquire drugs. Everybody knows that, you know, certain drugs are illegal. Obviously, cannabis is illegal. Obviously, cocaine and things like that are illegal. They still do it, which means they're willing to break the law. They're willing to take that risk in order to take those drugs. So I don't see why that would necessarily change if a new law is introduced. Because they're still illegal anyway now, and people are still taking it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen a massive, massive upsurge in the number of people who are doing drugs in this country. I mean, London absolutely stinks of cannabis wherever you go. A large part of the UK does, to be honest with you. And we do believe now that Matthew Scott is potentially back with us, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Kent. Matthew, take two. So, what's the point of all these of this idea of essentially, you know, really massively inconveniencing middle-class drug users, basically?
Well, I don't see it as inconvenience. I see it as enforcing the law. I mean, we've got a problem of young people stabbing and killing each other on the streets of London and other major cities over drug dealing. Police are doing their best to take out the main kingpins of our drug dealing gangs and shut down the county lines. But actually, this use is being fueled by people who think they can get away with it. As you've quite rightly said, people who think they're quite willing to do this and get away with the law. So people need to understand the consequences of their actions through drug awareness course and actually some proper penalties for a change.
And how would it target... I'm interested in this thing of targeting middle-class drug users. How would it target middle-class drug users? Surely the Home Secretary won't suggest that different rules will apply to middle-class drug users than if you're working-class drug users.
Well, the efforts will be done based on local intelligence. So what we have at the moment is local policing will use their detection dogs, or they'll use intelligence gained from members of the public to go and target particular venues or locations where they know that drug use is being done. But as we see an increase in police on the street with the uplift of 20,000, it'll give the police more powers to take action on the street rather than have to wait for further prosecution. So in all, it means that we can target more people, but the message needs to go back. But there is no acceptable drug use, whether it is people taking cocaine at a dinner party or heroin or casual use of cannabis. It's not acceptable.
Do you think it's a bit of a lost cause at the moment, this war on drugs? I mean, you know, it didn't work in America, for example, in the 80s, did it, the war on drugs? Isn't it time we actually just accept that it's a losing war, and maybe it's time to look at other ways of dealing with drug use in society?
Well, I think this is one such way that we can do that. We can't lose sight of the fact that the only people who win from the drug trade is criminals, whether that is through heroin, cocaine, or from cannabis. We need to target it at all levels. And what we're seeing in countries which have been lax on their drug laws or relaxed them in some way is that they've got increasing problems of mental health because of increased use of cannabis. We see problems with drug deaths across the United Kingdom, which have remained at stubborn levels. So I think it's important that we do take more action because we're talking about people's lives in our local communities, but importantly, the criminals who are profiting from it.
Yeah, Matthew, thank you very, very much. Matthew Scott there, of course, Police and Crime Commissioner for Kent, just reacting to this news that essentially they're going to be clamping down a lot more on, well, quote-unquote, middle-class drug users, I suppose, issuing them with things like taking their passports off them or their driving licences off them. They might be issued with electronic tags to test if they've been doing drug awareness courses. So,
yeah, having said that, having your passport taken away from you, it might be quite a much stronger deterrent for deterring people from doing certain crimes because, you know, as I said earlier, when I was on my way to work, the passport queue was massive. When you look at the airports at the moment, everybody's trying to get away on holiday. And if the threat was that you might get your passport taken away rather than you'll get, you know, a bit of a slap on the wrist, people might actually start paying attention to the law. But then again, it's all a bit authoritarian, isn't it?
well, it is a little bit. Right, and now, believe it or not, Brits are supposedly drinking less. Research shows that now a third of pub visits are alcohol-free, as 55% of the population have fewer than 10 units of alcohol per week.
Yes, well, this spike in drinking less has brought on the expansion of non-alcoholic beers into breweries like Heineken and Budweiser over the last few years.
Indeed, and with us now to talk about this more is the co-founder of Social Chain. It's Dom McGregor. Dom, thank you very, very much. So why are we drinking less?
I think, as you said there, brands like Heineken have introduced actually very good substitutes. So if you went to a pub 5 years ago and asked for an non-alcoholic drink, I don't think there'd be any options apart from a Coke. And obviously we've seen the rise of sugar in things like Coke as well. And there would be no options. So now with a really good drink like Heineken Zero and other non-alcoholic options, people now have choice rather than just getting something they didn't want.
And so I don't drink anymore. I'm a few months sober. I don't understand. Thank you. I don't understand why I'd stop drinking, decide to stop drinking, go to a pub and ask for a non-alcoholic beer. I mean, it just seems. Why do people who want to stop drinking just want to drink beer just without the alcohol? Just get another drink that doesn't try to imitate alcohol. It's like vegans trying to get a steak that's made of fungi or something.
I think there's a little bit of a psychological aspect of having the taste of beer but not being alcoholic. So I think especially for a lot of men, the kind of culture around pubs are a space where a lot of men go to socialise. So to feel included in those situations, having something like a non-alcoholic beer is better than having maybe a water. So I think it's actually an easy first step for people to make the change and not feel isolated from a social perspective.
And I suppose as well now, if you're going into a pub and, you know, a quarter of the people in there aren't drinking, it probably would be easier for someone who was essentially stopping drinking, I suppose.
Yeah, the number one reason people fail to stop drinking is social pressures. You know, from their friendship groups, people asking them why they're not drinking. You have a lot of issues with females who want to drink because they don't want to get questioned whether they're pregnant or anything. So people find a huge amount of issues with social pressures forcing them to drink. So having more people around you who are not drinking, more options, and visibly, you know, things like Heineken Zero and other brands around there, people find it much easier to not choose alcohol. And a lot of times people are peer pressured into drinking when they might not want to. So having those options is a much better way of people being able to say, no, I'm not going to drink tonight.
Yeah, when I went out, I was at a conference over the weekend and I went out on Saturday and because I was pretty much the only sober person there, the amount of people I saw falling over themselves, just, getting dragged out by security, men having their having to have their girlfriends drag them across the road, and people getting into fights. And I just thought, why the hell would anyone look at this and think, yep, that's exactly what I want to be doing tonight?
Exactly. And following on from what you just talked about with drugs, alcohol is the only drug you have to justify not taking. So, we just talked about people doing cocaine and cannabis. People, if I said I don't do cocaine, you'd understand. But if I said I don't drink, people still question it. So when it comes to alcohol, there's still this kind of social stigma around it about not drinking. And as you said exactly at the weekend, some of the states people get in from alcohol is a lot worse than drugs. And the damage it can cause people from a health perspective and from a social perspective is massive. It's one of the biggest burdens on the NHS. So, drinking, the culture, I think, is slowly changing, but we still have that kind of booze Britain aspect, which I think needs to go, and people need to realise there is another world out there, and it doesn't have to centre around alcohol.
Well, great. Thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show and discussing people drinking less. That's right, as more pubs in the UK stock less alcoholic beers and things like that as well, to try and cater for people's new desires. So
don't get me wrong, I do find it quite funny where, people embarrassing themselves when very drunk. It is funny, but I just kind of feel a bit sorry for them now. Like, you're going to have the biggest headache tomorrow when you wake up, and you're going to waste the whole day.
Well, there you go. Right, well, let's take you through some of the headlines of the day that you might have missed, OK? So Jennifer Lopez, or J-Lo, will now be joining by going J-Aff, is that right? After she finally married Ben Affleck in Las Vegas 3 months after they got engaged. There you go.
Got re-engaged as well. 17 years ago, they famously called off their wedding just days before it was due to take place, citing media pressure at the time, but breaking up soon after. But the couple have finally reunited and got married at a small ceremony at the Little White Wedding Chapel in Las Vegas, with the Latin pop star looking to change her name to Jennifer Affleck. That's really sweet. I love stories where people sort of break up when they're younger, and then they get on with their life, and then they see other people, and then they finally kind of reunite. It's just one of those really sweet, it's meant to be kind of moments.
Oh, there you go. Absolutely, yes. So there would be Jennifer Affleck now, then. We'll have to get used to that. Well, redheads rejoice, for a cinema chain in the UK is offering free tickets to gingers to help keep them out of the sun during this heatwave.
Yes, well, a showcase says that since our flame-haired friends are more sensitive to the sun and rising temperatures, they will be allowed to watch films for free at any of their cinemas today and tomorrow. One ticket, however, is available per day, per redhead. People have called you a redhead. I don't think you're ginger.
No, I think I'm just kind of
What colour hair do you think you have?
I don't know, really. Like,
You could try and get in, see if they'll let you in.
Well, I could try that. Maybe that's the way we find out. We decide.
Just say you identify as a ginger.
Is if I get allowed into showcase on Happy Ginger Day or whatever the heck they're calling it. Talking of gingers, Prince Harry, his Eton mates thought that he was nuts to be dating Meghan Markle, according to the author of an explosive new book on Megxit.
Yes, well, Tom Bauer, author of Revenge, Meghan, Harry and the War Between the Windsors, says the comment came after Prince Harry invited 16 of his friends and his girlfriend to a weekend shoot at Sandringham in 2016, a shoot which the mostly Eton-educated friends anticipated would be full of, quote, endless banter. But instead, Meghan apparently took the opportunity to, quote, reprimand them for their jokes about sexism, feminism and transgender people, leading to the group to conclude she lacked any sense of humour, was a dampener on the party, and that the prince was nuts to fancy her.
Gosh, well, there you go. I mean, that's quite strong stuff, isn't it?
There's nothing worse than somebody who can't take banter.
No, just a bit of a killjoy. There we are. A man from the United States has just set a new world record for being the first person in the 21st century to successfully push a peanut up a mountain using his nose. What have you done with your life, 53-year-old Bob Salem took 7 days, 7 whole days to complete his task, flicking a peanut up the Pikes Peak mountain in Colorado by basically just using a device attached to his nose.
You just wonder why. I mean, is it a midlife crisis? What's going on? Well, Pikes Peak is one of the tallest mountains in the United States at an elevation of over 14,000 feet.
Wow.
Well, it's one way to spend your time, I guess.
I set a world record on Friday, live on air here at GB
what?
News. Yeah. I made 19 cocktails in a minute.
What was the previous
18.
record?
Yeah, smashed it. Absolutely smashed it. Anyway, 1 in 4 calls to the NHS 24-hour hotline in Scotland were left unanswered in the last 5 months. That's nearly 200,000 callers who were left high and dry amid reports from Scottish Labour explain the NHS still cannot cope with post-pandemic pressures. The latest figures from June show the average hold time to speak with a professional was 22 minutes with more than 44,000 calls unable to get through. It's shocking. Yeah. Not good enough, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is it from us. We're going to go to some views to finish the programme off. Brian here says this is about the leadership election for the Conservatives. Following on from various comments made by contest candidates, the media and so-called experts, I firmly believe the parliamentary Conservatives have made a huge mistake. This own gold, manufactured by a few grease pole climbers, has already proven to be a disaster. I think it's interesting, actually, when we were watching Boris Johnson earlier making a speech about something, I can't remember what it was now, he performs so well in front of the camera. You kind of forget how charming and charismatic he is and how he's such a performer, not in a negative way, but he really does come across well. And looking at the candidates that were speaking yesterday, it's hardly full of the enthusiasm and the charisma that Johnson has had for a while. So I will miss that aspect of Boris.
Yeah, absolutely. Lynn's been on. When asked if they would give Boris a job in their cabinet if they win the race, nobody in the herd says yes. Lynn says, you are doomed. The 2019 mandate is negated. You are doomed to lose in 2024. With Boris, you might have actually had a chance. Without him, you are handing your government to the Labour Party and any other parties. That's Lynn's view.
Yes, well, Philip says, what an undignified, divisive mess. The Conservatives have put themselves in a large parliamentary majority to a probable bloodbath. That's how it's gone. Well, thank you for all your views.
Yes, thank you, everyone who's been getting in touch with us. Just a little reminder that every Wednesday we hand our show over to you. We are, of course, the People's Channel. It's your show, and obviously we want to know what you want us to talk about and what the most important issues are to you. You can even suggest guests if you want.
Yes, well, email in at tothepoint@gbnews.uk and tell us what you want to hear us and see us talking about on Wednesday, and we will do that in a couple of days' time. Well, that is it from us here at To The Point. But don't go away, because up next is The Briefing with Gloria.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. The Met Office have enforced a red warning for extreme heat and an amber warning for much of southern Scotland, England, as well as Wales. Unprecedented temperatures are expected. That's why there's a big fuss about this. We've never recorded temperatures as high in the UK as this plume of extremely hot air moves up. They've had red warnings in France, they've had red warnings in Portugal this week, yellow and orange warnings in Spain. So much of Western Europe under this heat. For many parts of the UK, it's a sunny day, and it's warm in Scotland, warm in Northern Ireland, but the highest temperatures, plus 35 or higher, expected across much of England and Wales, 38 Celsius in 1 or 2 spots. It's going to get even hotter than that on Tuesday, and actually very little relief from the heat. Overnight tonight, it could be the UK's warmest night on record, and it's because of that extraordinary daytime heat and temperatures from Glasgow down to Southampton staying up above 20 Celsius and in some places staying at 25, 26, 27 degrees all night. It's because of those exceptional levels of heat by day and by night that we are most concerned. There will be people who struggle to cool down in this heat. Some people will be OK. That's fine.